All right, my friend, we're back on a tough day in our walk with Abraham through his life of faith. Today's day 25 of our 40 days together, and Lot takes the spotlight, and we see a scene we'd rather not even know exists, let alone have to be witnesses to it. It's a tough day. Got my reading guide open here, taking a look at Genesis 19:30 through 38. It's the day where Lot becomes a father. And this, my friend, is a cautionary tale meant to make our stomachs turn. There's a warning here that's more than the simple, look at that, that's disgusting, don't do that. That's there, but there's more than that. It's a warning that says, don't walk the path that leads to the cave. Don't walk the path that leads to the cave. God actually is so concerned about us that he's willing to drop blood-curdling moments in the story here for us to find, because we're supposed to think about it. Now, we've already seen, by the way, do you notice the connection here? We've already seen Abraham father a child outside God's plans for him, and now we're seeing that happen with Lot too. It is just shocking. It's meant to get us thinking. All right, get thinking about lines we never want to cross and the lies we tell ourselves when we decide to cross them. All right. Lot's life here, his whole story arc, shows us that those lines are much further back from the cliff than we think. We got to the cave today because a lot of lines were crossed by Lot across his story. This was not a surprise, even though it's a shock, and it doesn't excuse what we've seen. But at the end, this is a path that's led him here. Think about it, all right? Let your mind drift back for a moment to the younger and more hopeful Lot, right? Think about his story. Let's go way back, about close to 25 years now. Lot leaves Haran with his uncle Abraham, sets out for Canaan. He knows the Lord is directing Abraham rather to start a new family there in Canaan, and Lot's in. There are ups and downs. There's the famine. There's the Egypt episode. There's the growth of the family business, remember all that. And the business gets so big, Abraham suggests that maybe they should split up, and Lot agrees to part ways with Abraham. And remember that? They're standing on the high hill, looking out to survey the options. Abraham says, you pick one direction, I will pick the other. And as Lot stands there, and it was very careful to tell us he weighed his options thoughtfully. And Lot saw the Jordan River Valley, and he saw opportunity. But what looked like opportunity to him then, and now it feels like a heart-stabbing regret. He crosses the line. He leaves Canaan for the Jordan River Valley and the promise of Sodom. And that was just the first of lines that Lot chooses to cross in his story. He crosses the border of Canaan into that Jordan River Valley, looked profitable, looked like opportunity, leaving Canaan. Then he crossed the line, the walls around Sodom. Instead of living around Sodom or dropping in once in a while to sell his wares and, make a living, he decides to make a home inside the walls of Sodom. He crosses a line. And then, not only that, but then he allows his family to not just live there, but be embedded in the culture. I mean, look at Lot's wife. Look at his daughters. I mean, they're engaged to a couple of local guys who laugh at the thought of God having something to say about life in their town. And he's got daughters who end up having the same kind of predatory approach to getting what they want as the men of Sodom did. You know what I'm saying? And then he crosses another line into isolation and despair, and he feels like he has nowhere to go. Even that little city Zoar, that's not far enough away. He's got to get out of there. I mean, he's reeling. He gets isolated and depressed most likely, and he's collapsing. Uh, he's imploding, and his personal judgment suffers as he looks for ways to mask the pain. All lines that Lot has crossed. Today's episode, man, it turns our stomach, but we owe it to ourselves to not turn a blind eye. Genesis spills ink on this episode to take us out to this revolting scene for a reason. And it's to say, see what happened to Lot? See what happened to his family? If it happened to them, if it happened to him, it could happen to you. The slow slide with lots of little lies that tell us the trade-offs are worth it until we discover that they aren't. And we discover it's too late. Oh, like Lot, we can think we're using Sodom to get what we want. But in the end, Sodom always uses us. We can think that we're using sin to get what we want. But in the end, sin uses us as accomplices in a twisted plot that brings future pain and suffering to ourselves and everyone our life touches. Like, isn't that how the trap gets set? You know, they dangle something in front of us that God has forbidden, you know. Hey, Sodom looks good, right? We see it. We feel the desire. We also sense a little bit of danger, right? In our sane moments, we're looking at that temptation and we tell ourselves, hey, it's got to be off limits for a reason. I mean, it looks good, but, you know, and then at that moment, there's where our enemy comes in and whispers, oh, you're right. It is off limits for a reason. You want to know why God says no? Because it's so good that it's like a little cheat code to the happiness God doesn't want you to have. God wants you to think you need Him, when all you really need is this. Such a lie. Oh, He'll show you the lush grass, the clear waters around Sodom. He'll never show you the cave where the trail is taking you until you're too depressed and too disoriented to put up a fight. And when you're at the point where you've crossed so many lines that you're so desperate to dull the pain, oh, enemy will just keep pouring the drinks. Temptation comes from our own desires. That's what James in the New Testament, Jesus' half-brother, tells us. It fits this scene so perfectly that it's chilling. James 1:14-15. It says, temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. It's a trap. These desires, James says, give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. In today's episode, we not only witness the final implosion of Lot and his family, we also learn the origin story of two people groups, the Moabites and the Ammonites, who will be a source of death, destruction, and temptation for the Israelites for centuries. The series of decisions that slid Lot into Sodom and eventually pulled him into that cave, literally in his story, gave birth to death. And today, as we see it, man, it turns our stomachs. But we owe it to ourselves to not turn a blind eye to what we see. The saying goes, sin will always take you further than you want to go and cost you more than you want to pay. And that leads to today's big idea. I've got it here in our reading guide. And it's this. Hey, before you make your next move, seriously, my friend, I know this is a serious conversation today, but it's here for a reason. Before you make your next move, you owe it to yourself to ask, where are God's boundaries here? Do not lie to yourself and do not cross the lines. My friend, it's a gift to have the lines. A life of faith trusts that God has our good at heart with the boundaries he sets. And whatever dangles in front of us to draw us across those boundary lines, like just a trap.